The Daily Bible in chronological order. New International Version Bible. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod. Luke chapter 23 verses 5 through 7. But they insisted. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Jesus before Herod Antipas. Luke chapter 23 verses 8 through 12. Palace of Herod on Thursday morning. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He piled him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this they had been enemies. Pilate's wife sends warning. Matthew chapter 27 verse 19. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. Pilate seeks to release. Luke chapter 23 verses 13 through 16 in the Praetorium, Thursday morning. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers of the people, and said to them, You brought me this man as one who was enticing the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence, and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him, and then release him. Jesus or Barabbas. Matthew chapter 27 verses 15 through 18. Mark chapter 15 verses 6 through 10. And John chapter 18 verse 39. Now it was the custom at the feast to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. Knowing it was out of envy that the chief priest had handed Jesus over to him. Crowd demands Barabbas. Matthew chapter 27 verses 20 and 21. But the chief priest, and Mark chapter 15 verse 11, and Luke chapter 23 verses 18 and 19, and John chapter 18 verse 40. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. They shouted back, No, not him. Give us Barabbas. With one voice they cried out, Away with this man. Release Barabbas to us. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. Jesus' crucifixion demanded. Matthew chapter 27 verses 22 and verse 23. Mark chapter 15 verses 12 through 14. And Luke chapter 23 verses 20 through 23. What shall I do then with Jesus who is called Christ? Pilate asked. They all answered, Crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, Crucify him, wanting to release Jesus. Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, Crucify him, crucify him. For the third time he spoke to them. Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then release him. But with loud shouts they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. crown of thorns. Matthew chapter 27, verses 27 through 30. Mark chapter 15, verses 16 through 19. John chapter 19, verses 1 through 3. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. Pilate presents Jesus. John chapter 19, verses 4 through 6. Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priest and other officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him."